cover some basics in Figma so you can learn how to build a really basic clickable prototype.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Sorry.
No worries. Thank you so much for like sharing a bit about yourself. I've just put the link to the attendance form is just in the chat. It'll be really appreciated if we could all quickly fill that out. If anyone has any questions or thoughts during the workshop, pop it in the chat and we'll have a talk about it later. With all that being said, let's get to the fun part and I'll pass it over to Gloria, who will be taking us through the design process and prototyping using Figma.
Great. Thank you so much, Boo. So I'm going to share my screen. Can everyone see that? Rue, can you see that?
Yes.
Awesome. Cool. Yeah, so in this 1 hour workshop, I'll be giving you an introduction to product design, as I said. So it's going to be an interactive workshop. So what you'll need is a pen or pencil, if you like, paper, and if you haven't yet done so, sign up for a Figma account. It's free and it takes like 5 seconds. So what is product design? So product design it's a process, and it's a process of identifying an opportunity in the market, defining that problem into a problem statement, developing a solution for it, and then validating that solution with real users. Product design process builds on a popular framework called design thinking, which we consider as a human-centered approach to innovation that integrates the needs of people, technological possibilities, and business requirements. So what's really exciting about being a product designer is that you get to wear multiple hats and your day-to-day is never going to look the same. So you'll be expected to be part problem solver, part researcher, part designer, part product manager, data analyst, and a part marketer. So you can see there's a lot of room for growth and development. And the product design process is a very critical framework that we as designers use to solve problems. And I'll be walking through each of these during the workshop. So the first half is more about discovery and user research. And then the latter is more on the actual prototyping and testing and iterating. So you can see like there's a continual feedback loop that goes round and round until we get to the final solution. Now, before we actually get started with the design process, it's actually really important to ask, why you're building this project, because you need to have a North Star to work towards. You can't build a product without a purpose or a vision. Otherwise, you run into, significant problems later on. And often the reason for why we do things stems from a problem that we've either experienced firsthand or through someone that we know. So it's really crucial to know, not only understand who our users are, but also whether, then what their wants and needs are. And there are a couple of ways to do this. So we conduct user interviews, which is a very common qualitative research technique, either in person or remotely. Or we also run online surveys or surveys in general to collect a large volume of data in a short amount of time. Contextual inquiry is a method where you observe people going about their day-to-day in the natural environment. And market research is really important because it allows us to understand who our competitors are and learn how they approach similar problems. So let's do some quick user research. But if you go to this URL here, so canva.live, and you enter the code 862089, I'd love for you to post in the chat some problems that you faced working from home since the lockdown. Maybe you can do it in the chat as well, but essentially, we're trying to understand the problem space, how are people, what problems are you experiencing working from home? Is the URL working? Yeah, privacy, lack of motivation, great, I love it. Gotta get our juices flowing. Constantly distracted, yeah, lack of motivation, not having a job. Burnout, yeah, I totally agree. Distractions, loss of personal contact, so isolation, not being able to meet people properly. Yeah, these are all really, really great, great ideas and great problems. Not great problems, but great brainstorming. Awesome. Yeah, so what we do as designers is that once we've collected the data, we usually group this into a process, what we call affinity mapping. So we take all this information and we try to synthesize that. And as you can see, I've tried to group these into common themes. So like unhealthy habits, working longer than usual, you're sitting down a lot, you're not exercising much. Like someone mentioned, you feel isolated because there's no kind of usual communication that you get in the office or in an environment where there are people. And you also get distracted because of things that are out of your control. So if you have pets or you have children or have neighbors, that can lead to a loss in productivity. And it's really important to not only understand who you're building for, to not only understand like the problems that you're facing, but also understand who you're building for. So creating user personas allows us to create reliable and realistic representations of the key audience segments, and also empathy mapping to kind of express, how a person feels, thinks, does, and feels. So that's my neighbor's dog. As you can see, it can get very distracting. So I apologize. So I'm going to end that live session. So now that we have a better understanding of the problems, we can start to define this and turn it into an opportunity. And we use a phrase called "how might we?" So how might we, encourage people working from home to adopt better health and wellness habits? And ideation is a time where, we get team members to brainstorm on a range of creative ideas that address the problem statement. And what we normally do is that we often take inspiration from competitors in the space to see how they're tackling a similar problem. So I've taken just some examples of 2 apps that I use. So Headspace is a mental health wellbeing app, and it allows you to go in, sign up for an account, and kind of do mental meditation courses. And you can also monitor your journey as you complete those courses. Similarly, we have Zen Mode. So Zen Mode is an app that actually forces you to take a break from the screen. So it locks you out of your phone for a period of time that you define. And you can achieve what they call medals of Zen as you, continue to take a break from the phone. And the reason why I've had a look at these competitors is so that I can understand, well, what is the user journey like? So what we call user journey mapping is a process that a user must go through to accomplish a goal. As you can see, the user must sign in, they must define their goals, receive a task, perform the task, and they have the option to track that progress. And we use this as a way to kind of, it's a useful structure that helps us to create our solutions and cover any jobs to be done or user stories. So I'd love if, you can grab a pen and paper for a really quick sketching session. And sketching is really important because it allows everyone to get into a room to align on the future vision. So when we're sketching, we also need to have a vision, and I've created some guiding principles around what we want our product to become, and also established boundaries around what we don't want our product to become. So, if we want to be encouraging people working from home to adopt better health and wellness habits, we want the product to be simple and not overwhelming. It needs to be human and empathetic, not robotic, because, I'm already feeling isolated. I'm already working time, so I don't want it to feel like a chore. I want it to be motivating and engaging. And also, given that I have a very busy schedule, I'd like it to be flexible and personalized and not forced. And I think, we spend so much time on our screens, so it would be really great if we could encourage less screen time and more activity. So I'd love if you could grab a piece of paper, sketchbook, whatever it is, grab that, fold it into thirds or into halves, and then fold it again, so you end up with maybe 6 squares. And essentially, sketching time is not about, creating a masterpiece. It's about getting those ideas and jotting them down to paper. So they can be, bullet points, they can be stick figures, they can be diagrams, they can even just be words. But the point is to really flesh out, an idea or a vision that you have in mind of how you might come up with a solution that actually encourages people working from home to adopt better health and wellness habits, and how you yourself as a user might want to use that. So I'm going to give you 2 minutes. Please feel free to participate if you like, and I'm going to put on some music as well to get that going. don't know if you can hear anything. Another a good thing is that if you're stuck for ideas, you can always reference to the journey map, and that helps to provide a structure for how you might approach the problem. So maybe each of the steps could represent a square on your sketch. All right, now we've got a couple more seconds. 2 more seconds. All right. Now, don't worry if it's not perfect. That wasn't the intent. It was really just to, you know, put your ideas down onto paper. So I'm not going to ask everyone to share their ideas, but I'll give you an example of something that I did. If I'll bring that up. So this is an example of an app that nudges you to take a break by providing you with personalized health and wellness activities. So as you can see, there's the sign up screen and then the second screen that allows you to define your goals. So maybe the reason why I'm using this product is because, you know, I want to exercise more, I want to connect with my friends, I want to learn new hobbies. And then the third screen is kind of like a recommendation of the activities that I can do based on my location or based on my calendar integration. So in this instance, maybe there's a park nearby, I can go for a walk for like 20 minutes, and then in exchange, I might get some credits, which I can use to exchange for rewards that can help me further my progress. And as you can see in the fourth screen, I've also got a progress chart, so I can track how many hours of exercise and calls or whatever it is that I'm doing that encourages me to kind of go out and socialize and exercise and whatnot. So your sketch doesn't need to look like this. It might be completely different, and that's totally okay. But the idea is that, you know, you shouldn't get stuck to the first idea, because your designs will be shaped over time as you continue to test and iterate. And also, as designers, you know, we shouldn't be afraid of sharing our work and getting feedback and collaborating with others. So usually in a brainstorming session, we would then do a second round of sketching, and we might even, you know, get ideas or inspiration from someone else's designs. So now, let's go into the design and prototyping phase. So as you can see, these are 3 key examples of prototyping tools that we might use. And today we're going to be looking at how we might use Figma. So if you have Figma open, I'd love you to, you know, get that up. So Figma is a cloud-based collaborative design and prototyping tool used to create websites, apps, or smaller UI components. And if you've got the desktop app, that's great. You can also use the web version. And how you would go about using Figma is, so essentially this is kind of like your home screen, and then you can see your recently viewed files. To create a new file, you can go to this plus icon here in the top right-hand corner, or also here as well next to drafts. So if I click that, it will create a new file for me called Untitled. And As you can see in the middle, you've got a blank canvas. So that's our canvas area. Across the top is your toolbar. So there are different actions that you can take to add like frames or add shapes and text. On the side, on the left-hand side, you've got your layers panel. So I'll show you what that does later. And also on the right is your properties panel. So if I am starting, a design, I usually create a frame. So frames are kind of like your artboards, if you're familiar with Sketch, or it's essentially a container that holds all your content. So when I click frame, or I can press F on my keyboard, you can see that the properties panel changes, and it allows me to select a custom frame. So if I'm creating an app, I would select an option from the phone section, or if I was creating a desktop app, I'd use the desktop frame. But maybe I start with Google Pixel, for example. And you can see here that the layers panel has changed. So now I have a Google Pixel frame here, and my properties panel has updated. So now I can actually change the width and the height of it if I wanted to. I can, change the color of it. I can add a different effects. So let's say, if I wanted to add like a button inside, I can go to my rectangle tool at the top in the toolbar and draw a rectangle inside my frame. And you'll notice that in the layers panel, there's now a rectangle child layer nested within the Google Pixel frame. And this properties panel has now updated and changed to allow me to edit the properties of this particular rectangle. So if I wanted to change the color of it, I can go to fill and play around with the color picker like that. So other kind of features in the properties panel is that there's a prototyping tab. So this is where you can specify interactions for your designs, and also for developers, where you can inspect the CSS of your designs. So this is really useful for when it comes to handing off your designs for development. On the left, you can see that you can create multiple pages within a file. So I can create a page for my designs, and I can create a page for like my components, for example, and I'll cover components in the next part. The assets tab is really useful for when you create components as well, so you can easily access any components that you've created in the file or from any team-enabled library. So what are components? So components, I've also got some notes in the deck as well, and I'll show that around. But components are essentially UI elements that can be reused across our design projects. So let's say I wanted to create a button component. So maybe in page 2, I'll go and create a button component by creating a rectangle. So I'll draw a rectangle on the screen. Maybe I want to specify the width and the height of that. So I can change my width to 500 pixels. Maybe not 500, 200 pixels, and my height to like 55, for example. So you can see now I've got a rectangle in the middle here, and I want it to have a label. So then I'll go to the toolbar and select text, and maybe add some text here, call it button. I can change the style of my text. So here you can see that the text, I have some options. So I can change maybe the font size to 18, maybe change the font weight to medium. I might change the font style to Open Sans. I might center align it as well. So as you can see, it's slightly misaligned with my rectangle. So what I can do is I can select both layers by dragging across, or selecting and holding down Shift. And then I can go up here, which is my where I can align my button text with the rectangle. So I can align the horizontal centers, and also can align it vertically as well. So now it's sitting right in the middle of my rectangle. Let's say I wanted to change the font color. Sorry, I wanted to change the rectangle to like blue, for instance. I can go to my color picker and change that to a blue color. And maybe I might want to change like the button text to white so that I can create some contrast, like that. And let's say I want to make this button look friendlier. So what I can also do is I can round the corners by going to this section here, the radius, and changing that to like 4, for example. So now we've got our button. But the thing is, we want to make this our master component. So what we'll do is we'll drag to select both layers, and you can see in the layers panel that I've got them both selected. And I can go up here at the top. So this is just hiding my, can't really see it. I can go to the top here, and you can see there's this diamond icon. It's called Create Component. So if I click that, it's going to create this. It's going to make it a component, and you can now see that my button label and my background is kind of sitting within that. I can also rename the component to like primary button, for example. And what's really cool about master components is that they really help to speed up your design workflow. So what I mean by that is you can create instances of this, and those instances will reflect any changes that you make to the master. So to do that, I can hold down the Option key, and you can see that my cursor now changes to have like a duplicate copy effect. And if I select it and drag this down, you can see it's now created a copy of my master component. And I can do that again. So now I have 3 buttons. So if I decided to change my master component to a different color, then my instances will also reflect that change. So that means that I don't need to go into every design and update every single button, because I can do it all in one place. And you can tell that it's an instance because it's got an empty diamond icon next to it, whereas a master component has like 4 filled diamonds inside. You can override a master component as well when you don't want an instance to update. So let's say I wanted, this button in particular to say add to cart. You can see it's started to break away from the master component. So even if I update the master component to something else, this won't be affected because I've overridden it. However, if I do want to reset that and make it go back to the default, then I can right click that and click reset, and it'll just reset itself. So that's some really basic introductions to components. What's really cool is that if I am designing something and I go back to my design page, I can access these components by going to the Assets tab. And you can see that it's created the primary component here, which I can easily access and drag into my frame. So let's say I don't want that anymore and I just want the continue button here. I can do it quite easily like that. You can use this to build an entire design system of buttons as well. So you can create like hover states and secondary buttons and disabled states and whatnot. So what I'd love you to do is if you could go back to Figma and go to this community. So if you go back home, the home button is just here where the icon is. And if you click community, I'd love for you to search for getting started with Figma. So there's a template that you can use. And what's really great about, sorry, let me go back. What's really great about Figma community is that it's kind of like the GitHub for design. So you can go here and you can, remix and reuse and duplicate any templates that people have published to Figma. And that really helps, especially if, you don't have much time creating a design system from scratch, or you just want to use some icons or wireframes. So that's what's really great about Figma community. So today we're going to be using a template that's already been created. So if you go and you search for getting started with Figma, you will see this purplish template file. And if you click on that, you can duplicate that. So then it'll make a copy and I'll add it to your Figma account. So yeah, just go there, duplicate it. If you don't have access to that, I can also post the link in the chat for you to download. And now you can see that this is a file that somebody's created. They have a page for components. They have one for mobile. So you can see the mobile frames they've created and also the desktop ones. Thumbnail essentially is just what a user would see if they saw this file in the homepage. And today we're going to be focusing on just prototyping this mobile version. So how someone has put this together is that they've used components. So like what we covered before, you can see that all the components are in this file, and how someone actually went about and created this home screen was by dragging in from the Assets tab. So I'll just give you a quick demo of what that looks like, but I can create a frame from Google Pixel, for example, and it's gonna create a frame for me. And if I wanted to add, these components in my frame, then I can search for that component. I think that component is called, you can also see the file name for the component. So I'll say mobile header menu. I should be able to search for that in here. So you can see I can drag that in from the Assets tab and pop that into my new frame, like so. But we won't be covering that today, seeing that all of this has been built out. We're just going to be linking them up to create a nice little prototype. So when you are viewing a prototype, you can go to this present mode here at the top in your toolbar, and that will open up the prototype link. Usually I like having them side by side. So what I do is I open up a new file and I open up that prototype in this new file, and I have them sitting next to each other so I can see what I'm doing. There we go. Cool. So you can see that's my prototype right now. It's not really sitting in a nice little device, but we can change that. So if we go to, 1 second. Yeah. So if we click prototype, we go here. You can select the device that your frame sits in. So in this instance, I can select Google Pixel 2, and this should update. Yep, like that. I can also change the background color of that so it looks nicer. So I can change to like a nice, nice little purple pink. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, so you can do something like that. Maybe just move it to the side, scale it down so I can see it. And yeah, so what we're going to do is I'm going to kind of tidy this file up. So right now it's a scrolling frame, but let's say I wanted to fix the top navigation menu so that no matter where I scroll, I can always see it. How we do that is by going to the editor and clicking on the element itself. So if I clicked, if I selected this banner here and I also selected this navigation menu, I can select both at the same time by holding down the Shift key and clicking on the other part of it. And then as you can see in the design tab, there's a section called constraints. You can fix that position when scrolling. So you check that box. And what that does is that it fixes it to the top of the screen so that no matter how far you scroll down, it's always going to be there. And you can also do this for all frames as well. So I'm going to go to the next frame, which is the product details page, and fix the position of the banner and the menu as well. And the same goes for the mobile cart frame. So I can do that. Now, as you notice, there's no kind of hotspots or anything in the prototype. So let's say I wanted users to go to the product details page after selecting a product on the home page. So what I'll do is I'll go down here, and maybe if they clicked on the image in this carousel, I'd like them to go to the next kind of frame. So how I do that is I select, so I can double click. Let's say I start from scratch, I double click and I click until I've got that area selected. Then I go to prototype, and notice that there's this blue kind of circular node. That allows you to connect frames up. So what I'll do is I'll click that and I'll drag it to the next frame. So you can now see there's a connecting line from frame 1 to frame 2. And also this pop-up has appeared. So this allows me to specify the animations and the interactions of the transition state. So if I wanted to make it look nicer, if I wanted to make the transition smoother, I can do that. So I'll go to animation, and let's say we want it to move in. So what this does is screen B, which is my product details page, will move in from the right, like that. So as you can see, if I go back to my prototype and I've selected this image here, my second screen will now move in from the right, like how I've specified it here. So if, say, I'm on the second screen, I want to go back home by clicking this home button up here, I can also do the same thing, just the reverse of it. So if I go to the second screen, I click on Figma, which is the logo, I can, using the blue dot, connect it back to my first screen. And again, specify the interaction, but this time in the reverse. So I'll be going to animations and then I'll click move out. And then I can change the direction on the arrow. So I'll move out. So if I click here, I'll move back out. What happens if you don't assign interactions? So it's going to default. So Melissa just raised a question. It's just going to default to the standard interaction, which is just tap. So if I, let's say I just dragged here and I didn't specify an interaction, the default would just be, it would navigate to the next screen and it would just look like an instant transition. So there wouldn't be any effects. Yeah. So yeah, so now we've just added 2 interactions. So I've clicked here, it will bring up my new screen. And then if I wanted to go back to home, I can click Figma and it will move back in the other direction. Now let's say I'm on this page, I'm on my, my product details page, and I've got a add to cart button here. And clicking on that, I want the user to see an overlay. So so we've got this, this overlay here. So what that means is I want this to appear on top of the frame. And how I can do that is if I drag, so I've got the button here selected. If I click and drag that to my overlay, I can change the interaction so that instead of navigating to that as a separate screen, I can choose open overlay. And what that will do is I'll put it on top of my screen. I want to center it so I can specify the position of where it sits in relation to the rest of the content, and I can center that. And also, because it's an overlay, I'd like to add some contrast, so I can add a background behind it and specify the opacity to 50%. So what that actually does is if I go down here and I click add to cart, it's going to bring up this overlay like how I've got it here, but on top of the frame. And let's say I wanted to go back to the product details page by clicking close, I can do that. And they can, you can also see they've already done that for you. So clicking on this back button, I can specify that on tap, it will close the overlay. And we can also do the same for this exit button as well. So if I click on the exit button in this frame and I click interactions on tap, I'd like it to close the overlay. So if I go back to my prototype, I add to cart, it appears on top, I can close it. And yeah, so that's that. Now, let's say, you know, I wanted this checker button to go to my next screen, which is the cart screen. So what I can do is, again, selecting just this button alone, I can see there's a blue dot there. I can drag it so that it connects to my third screen. And we don't need to necessarily specify an interaction for this, but you can if you like. So there are different animation options that you can experiment with, but I'm just going to keep it simple. So if I click checkout, it's just going to take me to my checkout screen. So now we're just going to wrap up this prototype by adding a few more interactions. You might notice there are some buttons at the bottom of each of these pages. So what we can do is we can fix them. So that means they will always appear in my screen no matter where I'm scrolling. And same goes with the next screen. So my checkout page with no data and checkout page with data, I want to fix the positions of those buttons. And same for the last screen, the final order summary. And then I want to also hook them all up together. So if I'm on my cart screen here, so here I am, and I want this button, proceed to checkout, to go to the next page. Again, I'm going to click on the button, and then I'm going to go to prototype to activate the prototyping mode, and click and drag this to connect to the next screen. So now if I click on proceed to checkout, it's going to take me to this page. And because we want to mimic what it would be like in real life, we'd obviously want the user to click on the input field first to fill in the form. So if you have the first field selected, you can click and drag and connect that to the next screen, so that clicking on that will load the data. You can see now the form has been filled. And let's say I wanted to continue and place my order. So again, I'll go to this screen here, and down the bottom, I'm going to link my place order button to the last screen, which is my order confirmation, order summary. And you can see that if I click that now, it's going to take me to the last screen. Another nice thing you can do is you notice how we've got back buttons here. We can specify the interactions for that so that it takes you back to the previous screen. And how you do that is if you go to prototype, you click tap. You can specify back here so that clicking back will take you back to the previous screen. And you can do the same for the other checkout pages. So if I click back button on my form, I can click tap and go back. And same goes here, I can click tap and go back. Awesome. Oh, and one final thing really nice to have is the menu button here can open up another overlay. So we've got a sub menu overlay frame at the bottom. So clicking and dragging on that to connect it up, you can specify the interaction details to open overlay. So it's going to appear on top. And I can also move the frame around so I can specify where it sits in relation to the menu as well. So now if I click back, oh, not that one. I can do it for this other frame. I'll go select the hamburger menu and scroll and connect it to my menu. And then specify the position of where it sits in relation to that. So now if I click that, voila, there's my menu. So that is that. So now you should have a working clickable prototype. If you don't, that's okay. I can also share with you the final prototype as well. But what's really great about having a prototype is that it allows you to, do user testing. So how you would go back to the starting screen in this prototype is by pressing R on your keyboard, and that would take you back to the beginning. So to test this flow out, we would scroll down, we would click on this image here, it will bring up the product details page. If I wanted to add this product to my cart, I could click add to cart and it'll bring up an overlay. And then I can continue to checkout by selecting checkout, or I can close the frame as well. I can click close. But let's say I wanted to click checkout, it'll take me to the checkout page. And then I can continue to proceed to checkout as well, where I can then fill out a form by selecting the input fields. And then I can continue and place the order. So then I receive an order confirmation at the end of it. What's really cool about Figma is that there's an app that allows you to view all of this on your own mobile device. So if you go to the App Store or Google Play, you can search for Figma Mirror. And then if you go back to your prototype here and you select the frame or the first frame, you will be able to see that on your phone. So you can interact with it as well. So that's a nice little handy tip. Oh, I think my presentation is frozen. Oh, there we go. Yeah, so once you've got a prototype, it's really important to kind of test this. And we call this usability testing. We can use websites like Usability Hub or usertesting.com, where you can conduct tests online, formally or informally. And we also, there's another popular technique called dog fooding, which is where your product team kind of tests the product in-house before releasing it to the public. And that's a really great way to kind of identify critical issues up front. So congratulations, you've shipped your product, you created a prototype, and now you've got it in the user's hands. However, that's not the end of it. that's only just the beginning, because once you've shipped a product, you need to monitor its success metrics and see whether, how many people are adopting it, what's the activation rate, how many people are dropping off, churning, or coming back to use the product. So you need to, get into a regular habit of doing A/B testing on your design changes as well. That's really important because it gives you confidence before you kind of roll it out to the public. And I think most importantly is, don't just rely solely on analytics alone. You can't really determine the effectiveness of a product design based just on numbers. You should also get into the habit of conducting hallway tests or getting user feedback from surveys or in the product. And some tools that you can use are Hotjar or Google Analytics. We use Mode at Canva, and this usually can get the help of a data analyst to set up tracking events for you, but it's a really great way to see where people are dropping off in the funnel. So key takeaways, at the end of the day, even though I just went through a very structured and linear process of product design, the reality of it is that that's not always the case, and that your product design process should really morph to fit the project and not the other way around. It's not a linear process. You might be jumping back and forth to learn more about the problem space. And also remember, product design is not, once you've shipped a product, that's it. It's a never-ending process. Continual improvement is at the core of what we do. So it's really important to keep testing, refining it, and improving. And final words is, if there's anything that you're going to take away from this presentation, it's the most important thing is, you're designing for people, and you as a designer, you have an important role to shape in our future, because the products that we create have the power to really transform how societies behave, think, and feel. So we need to consider, how we're designing our product. Are we, creating bad habits? Are we getting people to form, good habits? Are these products inclusive of everyone, regardless of their gender or their race or their ability? So I know I went through a lot of content today, but I hope you took away something. I'm always happy to answer any questions that you have. We also have product design internships at Canva if you are interested. We recently closed applications for our last round, so the next intake would be from mid next year. You can contact our university coordinator, Jess Beard, at jessica.b@canva.com, or you can also reach out to her on LinkedIn if you do have any other questions about our internship. And you can also connect with me on LinkedIn or email me at my address as well if you'd like to chat more about design or even get some feedback on some design work, maybe if you decide to pursue this case study that we talked about earlier today. But hopefully I've left enough time for a quick Q&A session. I think, Rue, you might have something to add to that.
Yeah, definitely. First of all, that was really awesome, and I'm really keen to start experimenting with Figma and use it on my project afterwards. There were definitely some questions from the audience, so let's dive into the Q&A session. Something that the audience was curious about was what made you want to pursue a career in product design, and what's your favorite and maybe least favorite part of the design process?
Yeah. That's really great question. So what made me pursue a career in product design, I think is, I've always loved designing, creating things. I think what's really exciting about product design is that, there's so much opportunity and space to kind of grow and develop. As designers, our ultimate goal is to solve problems that exist in our society and really shape the future of how we want people to think and feel. And I think what I really love about the product design process is that, it's a process of continual improvement. So you can kind of see, how people use your product or what impact it has on their lives. I think what's really empowering, what's really rewarding is being able to see someone use your product and go, well, this has really made an impact on my life. This has really helped me to achieve my goals. And it's made my day-to-day, a lot more efficient and more effective. And I guess the challenging part about design is, mainly around probably stakeholder management. So, you know, you need to be working with PMs, engineers, customers, and getting everybody aligned on the end vision and the end goal. So sometimes there are tight deadlines, sometimes there are limitations that you need to work with, and that's just a challenge. That's one of the challenges of being a designer. Sometimes you can't always get, you know, your future vision shipped because of, you know, tight deadlines or technical limitations. So that's also something really important to consider as well when you are designing a solution.
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely really fulfilling to be able to see your product, sort of like people using it and the fact that you have made an impact on them. So I totally agree with you on that. We also have someone from the audience asking, do you often have multiple people working on the prototype at once? And if so, how do you organize this?
Yeah, that's a really great thing because Figma is a collaborative tool. So I don't know if you noticed, but you can share this file with people and invite them to kind of jam on the design as well with you. So yeah, in some instances, at least, you know, with Canva, I work with other product designers to kind of come up with an end solution. Ultimately, there is one design owner who kind of, you know, carries out the end-to-end process, but you might invite other people to work with you collaboratively on a solution as well. So what was the other part of the question? How do you organize this?
Yeah.
So we have file structures that we have in place at Canva. So, you know, we might have projects and what we call like groups. So within a group, you might have multiple files. So that allows anyone from the team to go into a file and kind of look and see what other designers are working on as well. And they can go in and comment on them and maybe make changes and whatnot. But at the end of the day, you as a designer, you're owning one, you know, one file, and then you can invite other people to kind of add to that as well. There's a lot of really great questions in here. I don't really know which ones to look at.
There was what are some of the best venues to find opportunities in the design field?
Is this from like a career perspective or just like learning, development?
Perhaps if you could give us insight to a bit about both.
Yeah. So in terms of like learning, education, there's a lot of resources out there, and I think, you know, it can be quite overwhelming for someone, especially starting out in the field. I would recommend, you know, looking at like the tutorials. So in my deck, I have some resources that you can look at around using Figma. So down here, I've got some links to articles so you can read up about the product design process. There's a really great writer called Nick Babbage on Medium, who's the author of the publication UX Planet, and he posts some really good blogs on like how you can, you know, on like specific design principles. So choosing a radio button versus a checkbox, that kind of stuff. The other kind of community space wise, you can look at like Meetup. So I think meetup.com, there's some Sydney designer groups they can join, and they run a couple of events where they invite people from the industry to give talks on product design. In terms of career, there are a few job places that you can look at. I can't think of any off the top of my head for design in particular, but there are a few on like the startup job listing pages that you can look at for product design roles. But LinkedIn is predominantly the key kind of platform you would go to for that. I'm happy to share around some resources as well. I have a few resources in a blog that I wrote up a 2 years ago that I can share around. Oh, there's a really great workshop program actually by, I think, ThoughtWorks. So ThoughtWorks is like a consulting agency company, and they run I think it's a 10-week program that allows any university students or people who are starting out in the career in either design, engineering, or like business related roles to come up with a project and work with a project with other people, which you where you will receive like mentorship from people at ThoughtWorks. So think that is called Level Up Builds. I would highly recommend that you check it out. They accept applications around, I think, August, September or something. But I did it when I was still at uni. I would say it's probably one of the most valuable kind of lessons that I've taken up.
Definitely got to check it out, especially when it's September soon. Is there, some of the audiences were also curious about sort of whether Figma is your go-to tool and sort of industry standards in terms of using Adobe versus Figma?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so Figma is kind of like the new kid on the block. So a lot of, I was using Sketch and Envision previously, and I think there's still a lot of designers still using that as well. I'd say, you know, Figma has its advantages because you don't need to go to a different platform to prototype, because as you saw, you can do prototyping and designing all in one. And it's got the additional functionality of inviting people to jam on your design. So it's a collaborative tool. And I think that's what's really great, is because, you know, as designers, we should be inviting people to design with us. And that's kind of the purpose of why Figma kind of was born. So opening up our doors and allowing PMs and engineers and customers to go in and see what the design process is. So I'd say, you know, it doesn't really matter which tool you choose. I think you can build up the same skills, and even if you are familiar with using Sketch and Envision, I'm sure you can pick up Figma quite easily, because I guess the same mental models apply, and the same kind of like features and whatnot, the same structures and models apply for Figma as well. So I'd say, you know, if you are going to pick one, I would start with Figma because it's free. Sketch, I think you have to pay upfront, and you only get a limited time trial. So I would recommend Figma.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with you in terms of the transferable skills, especially with sort of this different industries use different types of tools. So it's definitely more about the transferable skills more than sort of which software you're actually using.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Would you like to share with us sort of your pursuit in becoming a product designer? I've heard that you didn't start off in a more design or sort of traditional role.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. Funnily enough, I started out as an accountant. I did auditing at KPMG when I was still at uni. So I think it's been an interesting kind of career progression, given that I actually didn't study a degree in design. I kind of picked it up and taught myself how to use Sketch and Envision and a couple of other things. So how I actually made the transfer was internally at a company that I was working at about 2 years ago, a year ago. So Rot, they had a position for a UX designer at the time, and I guess given that I had an interest, you know, I was working on a startup as a designer, trying to figure out, you know, how to design things. I figured that I really needed the actual proper training and whatnot. And that's how I kind of got my foot into the door. I kind of gave it a shot as kind of like a transfer, short-term transfer, and then through that I was able to kind of learn on the side, but also apply some of the learnings to the job that I was doing my day-to-day. And I would say that how I really taught myself to design was just by reading a lot of blogs, attending workshops. I did a really great masterclass called Design Sprints, run by some organization, but you know, there's heaps of that stuff online. You can go to a design sprint workshop, learn the fundamentals of design thinking, and then kind of use that and apply it to your job on a day-to-day. And that, yeah. So I think the key takeaway is that it doesn't really matter where you start. You know, if you're interested in design, there's nothing really stopping you from doing that. You can always learn. You can always, you know, reach out to people in the community, talk to people, get an understanding of what that profession involves, and even start your own project. I think, you know, taking the initiative to start your own project and teaching yourself the design skills by using that as an example is a really, really great way of building up those technical skills as well. So I wasn't, I had no training in Sketch, but I used Sketch as a way to, build out some mock-ups for a startup that I was working on. And through that, I was able to learn, a few things about how to use the tool.
Yeah, on the same sort of train of thought, I suppose, from projects, is there any way we can perhaps get code or sort of turn the prototyping into a more back-end sort of type for people who want to fully develop themselves?
Yeah, so I guess there's a limitation with Figma is that it's not really a replacement for the actual thing. There is the code kind of option on the code tab here, which allows any front-end developer to go in and inspect the CSS. But I guess, yeah, you're gonna have to work with an engineer to actually build it and make it responsive, because Figma is really just for mocking up like your design. And it shouldn't really serve as a replacement for the real thing. However, the benefit of mocking up your designs and doing user testing is that you can get feedback on your concept earlier on, and that will save you a lot of time and money later down the track, because you've kind of validated the solution already.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's nothing more frustrated than you sort of building your product, but then realizing, oh, I gotta change this. Yeah, so on that same note as well. So thank you so much, Gloria. This officially concludes our event today. On behalf of Digital Society and our audience, we would like to express our gratitude and appreciation for taking the time and sharing your insights with us. Is there any sort of final words you'd like to say?
No, yeah, I think that was really great. Thank you so much to Nikki, Letitia, Shania for organizing this event. It's been really, really great. Just being able to share, my learnings and my experience, and I hope you all kind of took something away from that. I'm more than happy to share this presentation around with you as well. I'll probably just pass it on to Steffi to email it and pass it on. But yeah, I don't really have anything else to say, but if you do have any other questions after this, I'm more than happy to respond on like LinkedIn or by email. Thank you so much.
No, thank you. So thank you, our audience, for joining us today as well. A friendly reminder to fill out the ARC attendance form posted in the chat, and if we could perhaps turn our cameras on and smile, we'll quickly take screenshots and post them on LinkedIn. Definitely share your experiences and what you've learned today. Like our Facebook page and stay in tune with our next series, the Entrepreneur Series, and have a good day. Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you. See you.
Thank you.